What's up, you silly seals? This is ya boy, Paul. I came into that with a lot of energy because today is my day, everybody. And of course, I have my lovely co host.
Alejandro.
Hey, Alejandro. So, this is my episode today. We are talking about what we have been playing this week, one, and two, the second week of my topics. Now, Alejandro, I'm going to let you take the floor for a minute.
Yeah, so for everyone that's joining in and seeing now this posting up, kind of like we mentioned in our news show on Monday, that what used to be the one big podcast where we had everything at once, we're splitting it. So like the news is its own thing. That's always going to be on Mondays, always aiming at 5 p.m. Central Time. At least that's when we want that show to always be going live. And then us talking about games and Paul's topic is going to be what's going to be airing on Wednesdays, hopefully also at 5 p.m. give or take the internet uploads on time, because I tell you, my upload times suck. But also another thing is that we've always mentioned about being co-hosts, but since we came back and did the show this year, I've always been the one hosting. And then I thought, how about I give Paul the floor in the things that he really loves, which is talking about games and the topics, and then I take the floor when we talk about news, because I love throwing those nuggets. So Wednesday is Paul's show, Monday's mine. And that's how we finally like balance this co-host thing. And I also kind of want to be bouncing off from what he like throws at me now, instead of always him being the one that has to bounce off what I throw him. So
exactly.
Very excited.
That's where we're coming in here with this today. Alejandro, we got some good stuff. Oddly enough, a few of our games that are exactly the same this week.
Yes.
I don't want to blame 2021, but it sure is looking like that's the reason for this case. Otherwise, we would both be playing very widely different games. And sometimes those are fun, but I think it's also fun when we both dial in, play the same couple of games, and then see our differing opinions.
And sometimes not even like on prompt. Like one of these was like, I just have happened that I was playing it and you happened to just buy it. So.
Yeah. And they both all four of our lovely decisions to play games and four banks of where we just spent all of our money.
Yeah.
Do we want any of it back, Alejandro?
So far, no. Not from these.
I agree. All right. Well, let's jump right in, Alejandro. Do you want me to just list them all, or do we want to just kind of go as is?
Yeah, we can always list what are some of the games that we're going to be talking about in the specific week, and you can always list them.
Got it. Well, everybody listening, what I got to play this weekend was Deathloop, obviously. Little bit of it, though. I've kind of finished up with my my time with that game as of right now, unless I really want to just mess around and explore, and if I want to platinum it, because it seems doable if I can just find out what the heck these hidden trophies are about, because that's my problem.
So, quick question. Do you know that you can open up the hidden trophies within the trophy list?
You told me that. I just remembered. Gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
yeah, you like click the
square or something.
Yeah, you click that. They changed it a little bit, but you click the trophy and it says unveil information, and then it tells you exactly what it is, if you want to know.
Well, I am gonna go through that now and figure it all out, because before that you would just kind of look at a trophy list and then you'd compare and see like, all right, what do I have and what am I missing, and then you would write down whatever was hidden on the list. Yeah, all the hidden trophies and what you think they might be, and then you would just do your best to do those things. But that's gonna help me a lot.
I will say the trophy list of Deathloop, amazing. It's what I love about trophies in a way, because it actually, especially with the kind of sandboxy nature of Deathloop, I would say that those trophies allow it to show you that there's many different ways that you can play something, or like a very specific way that you can approach killing one of the targets. Like Fia is one of them, like the crazy girl that's like inside the nuclear reactor. But if you get found, she literally explodes the island and sends you back in your loop. You can get a trophy just by sneaking in and just killing her without like no noise. And some of my favorites is walking in, not killing literally anyone other than the target, and walking out without ever being seen. I did that at the end.
I did get that trophy.
I got 3 trophies at once. It was like beam, beam, beam. I was like, that's awesome.
Did you do the run where you went the entire time not killing a single Eternalist and only kill? Okay, so that's what you're referring
that's
to.
what I got. Yeah, I wasn't
That's
seen. I didn't kill an Eternalist, and I
wow.
killed the targets without shooting a bullet. It was when you had to like pursue two targets that are kind of like in love and kind of hidden.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
flooded
was
the place.
really entertaining. Same. I found out there was a faster way to do that. Somebody walked in and headshotted both of them immediately and then just left. And I was like, oh, so I went through this entire process thinking what I did was the safest and most efficient. And that didn't work out. The other process that I did was hacking all of those tripwire mines and letting them just walk into it as I activated the flooding, and that felt so satisfying because you're a walking tank at a certain point in that game. If you know how to put your build together, you're unstoppable.
Yeah. Now, how long ago did you finish it? Because I finished it yesterday, so it's really fresh in my mind. You've been finished it for like a while. You did it before me.
A solid, maybe like a max of a week after it came out. But I did fill it with a lot of extra silliness and ridiculous running around back and forth.
Yeah, the game even recommends you. It tells you, yeah, you finished the game, but there's more secrets, there's more ways, go explore.
Yeah.
Or if you want, just reset everything.
Do you find any of the really weird, not really Easter eggs, but like threads that don't really get brought up in the main game again? There was one that I haven't in particular, but do you have any?
The only Easter egg that I really saw was the Dishonored Easter egg near the end.
Okay, so
that's the only Easter. I didn't see other ones.
I guess Easter egg isn't really the best term. It was more like extra things in the plot that make things more interesting, but don't actually tie into it.
I actually didn't. Yeah, I was just so laser focused and trying to nail my characters and targets and everything relating them that's as far as I went.
There is there's stuff that I haven't figured out, like the guy that Harriet lowers into the poison. Like apparently if you kill everyone and leave him alive and he doesn't die, supposedly he's the guy that runs a mask emporium that opens up a store later in the day that you can go into. Another being, I think it was actually for the main storyline, but there's the guy that his place burns down at a certain point in the day, but if you go there earlier, you shut down the generator, you get stuff. But the biggest one that I found was like a full cutscene. There's another lady that is hiding in her room who gets murdered during the days, but if you can get to her beforehand and you know like the password, she'll let you in and you have a whole conversation with her that she remembers everything from each day, like you and Juliana.
And 2-bit.
Yeah. And 2-bit. She is like, she doesn't know why, but she's been really wanting to like remember. And then I won't spoil the rest of that, but I don't think I've finalized that like strange unmarked plot line. And then afterwards I spoke to Juliana about it and she's like, yeah, there's things to figure out and we need to work together on it. And then that was like the end of that conversation at the time. But man, just to imagine, like there's still so many things that I haven't figured out about this game that I'm just like, I don't even know where to look anymore.
Yeah, I've been wondering if there's more to like the circus from one of the areas that's close to Harriet, where you see like all this like, where I tell you, oh, the pentagram's here, and like there's like this room that you go in, and there's like a machine that you press in and tells you something. I always wondered if there was more to it because you never really use it. You only have to open like a safe that's in that room. So there's more to this game that you even think there is.
Yes, there absolutely is. And I mean, like there's the entire backdoor hacking method to 2-bit that I found where you have to like defend these radio satellite dishes, and then you get more commands to give 2-bit. one of which was to mark Charlie as the invader, and so he gets gunned down by all his own people.
Okay,
So
didn't
there's
that
some
sucks.
stuff in that game that you can find that continues to make things even crazier.
It's literally the Metal Gear Solid 5 philosophy. There's
And
so
it
many
doesn't.
ways that you can complete those missions that I didn't even know were even possible.
Now imagine instead of what we have in Deathloop, you get these locations spread out by about 40 miles of wasteland that you get to ride a horse through to get to them.
Yeah.
And then you have Metal Gear Solid 5.
Mhm.
So yeah.
So
Well,
now, so now that you finished it, obviously this game reviewed really high in like places like IGN and GameSpot and all of that. Like, now that you finish and you're done with it, do you think it was worth that praise, or do you think it maybe was scored a little high?
let's I know the answer, but I don't want to say it. The problem with this year is that, of course, we haven't had really anything coming out. And I
Mhm.
remember the way I was feeling about Deathloop at the start of the year, throughout summer and everything. And
You
it
already
was
didn't even
just
know what it
this,
was.
yeah, it was just this unremarkable, weird first person shooter that was like, all right, it's Arcane Studios, but they're really not doing a good job. I even got to watch this YouTuber called Girlfriend Reviews,
Mhm.
and the entire concept is this isn't a review of the game, it is a review of what it's like to live with somebody who plays video games. And she watches her boyfriend play these games and explains from like a spectator's perspective of what it's like. And it's really funny because it's a very different perspective on games.
Mhm.
But she'll do like reviews of all the biggest things. And she spoke on the idea of Deathloop. And it was kind of funny because I am losing my train of thought all of a sudden. What was your initial question? That was leading to something just
Yes.
now.
Do you agree with the high praise it
There we
got from
go.
some of the big outlets, like super high
Um,
praise, the highest of marks?
so she had mentioned something similar in her review, was that um it doesn't feel like, if we had gotten everything else out there like we did, this wouldn't have been more than, I fear, a fart in the wind, unfortunately.
Mhm.
They showed clips of the initial like trailers, the live action guy trying to explain everything on a whiteboard, which was the point I was trying to get to. I almost
Mhm.
forgot it. And the way he was trying to like make X's and say like, oh, if you kill this guy through this place and you go to here, and it looked like a game of Clue that he was trying to play out on a whiteboard. And it made no sense, even from me who had played the game now, looking back on it. I'm just thinking, who in their right mind was thinking this was a good idea to market this game like this? And if it hadn't gone the way it did this year, that game would have crashed and burned, sadly. The way it is right now, I think it's a sleeper success because all of these big market areas are giving it these high reviews, which is leading people to play it
Mhm.
and actually enjoy it. So, to give you a long answer for a short question, I don't think it's worth a 10,
Mhm.
but I think it's way better than most of everything else we've gotten this year.
Yeah.
Therefore, for 2021, it's a 10.
Yes. I can
um,
understand that. Like, I got too caught up in the fact that both like big sites like IGN and GameSpot agreed on giving it a 10. I was like, okay, that doesn't happen often.
mhm.
And then playing it, like initially playing it and seeing the brain dead AI, I was like, this seems like a huge oversight to not really mention in your reviews that the AI on this game is atrocious. But it has a point the further you go in. And
Yeah.
I got too caught up on that. I was like, ah, man, that sucks that they didn't really mention this, because now a lot of people are going to get caught up on the fact that, is this a 10? Is this not a 10? And
Yeah.
that tends to, usually the discourse around that is always like, oh, this isn't a 10, so it sucks, or something like that. That's usually how it is. And like, I kept talking with one of my friend Josh, about it, when I kept telling him, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of angry they gave it a 10 because I don't think it properly discusses. Yeah, it does a lot of things really great, but these things are so hard to not ignore that I feel like a lot of people are gonna get too caught up on that. But it's
You
a
bring
really
up a
great
good
game.
point, actually.
Yeah, but
It is.
it's a really great game, and that's the thing. Like, it's right now it's my front runner for game of the year right now, because the other game that I also had it in mind that I mentioned it last week when we talked about, and we're going to talk a little bit later, I need to finish it first. But I feel like, yes, it stands out more this year because we have barely gotten anything. Just looking at my list of things that I have bought this year, it's pretty anemic. It's been mostly playing a bunch of stuff from previous years that have either gotten enhanced on a new machine or just have the time finally to play because we barely have anything new to play. So this is a great backlog year if you have been amassing your backlog. But yeah, I feel like Deathloop as a shooter is like, it's very unique amongst like the crowd. There's rarely you've seen a first person shooter that handles all of this as both a stealth game, as a rogue-like light that doesn't punish you like a rogue-like, and its dynamism, like its dynamic systems and all of that. And yeah, it's just something that to me really will stand out like for the rest of this year. They should be thankful that everything else has slipped, because I kind of agree with you that kind of like in the same vein as many arcane games a little too niche.
Yeah.
That sometimes they can get lost, but when you're starving for something new,
he got all robotic on me.
My mic messed up again. Like that one time, my mic is being stupid.
You were good until you went quiet, and then when you spoke again, you were robotic. It was funny.
Technical issues abound. But yeah, and my door had opened like mysteriously, so I was like kind of looking. I was like, right, like did Cold just sneak in? He's about to kill me right now.
The PT ghost from Death Stranding showed up.
Yeah. Yeah, never mentioned ghosts, but yeah, it's like I really like this game. I think the outlets that gave it like 8 5s or 9s, I think that's more in the money, and that still to me puts it in the top tier because kind of like you mentioned, there's barely anything. We'll eventually talk about the games that actually came out this year, and you'll be surprised how little there is. There was. If it was an indie, the indie scene has been booming this year, but I barely played those. So
I agree to that. I did want to bring up one thing. You brought up a good point. Are we too focused on the idea of a masterpiece? And where it's like, what I find is everything has to be a masterpiece. It has to be the next 10, the next classic, or it's garbage.
I feel that this is something that I really like about, and this gets lost in the review descriptions about like IGN and GameSpot. 10 for 10 is not flawless. There's flaws in it. It's just about the things that makes it so good that helps transcend most of those flaws. And I'll even say it, like even with the AI thing, once you get all your powers, you no longer think about the AI being brain dead. You think about them as a power fantasy that you figure out as a puzzle and how you can mix all of that. If the AI was super smart, it would have been fun to do those powers. So everything eventually did click for me, and I saw where they were coming from. But I feel like we get too caught up in associating the number 10 with the word masterpiece. Whenever someone sees a 10, you immediately think something's flawless because we come from education systems. But there's no game that's flawless. There just isn't.
I'm referring to. Oh, my computer just freaked out. Hang on a second.
We're all having
okay.
We're all having technical issues.
I was trying to scroll through IGN just to see it happen, and like my whole screen went black. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because IGN's 10 is taglined as masterpiece,
and you read the description was us,
right? And that's what I'm thinking is, but not just on that. Like I'm thinking on a meta side of as a consumer, you, me, everybody else on social media and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of people in media are way too focused on the concept of this needs to be perfect or it's nothing. And I feel like we've actually started that upward tick again, but there was a string of time, I would think in the last like 5 years roughly, and probably starting before that, was that overly cynical, overly critiquing method of thinking of things. I mean, just look at I wouldn't call it a fall, but the rise and fall of CinemaSins and that kind of way of thinking where we're going to break apart everything and every little nitpick, and our perspective is going to be very specifically negative if they don't explicitly tell you it's a plot hole, and if they do explicitly tell you it's called telling not showing and everything's terrible. And I think that popularity raised like a mini generation of media consumers that are really
Black and white.
overly yeah, it's like black and white. It's going to be the greatest thing ever because it's avant-garde or whatever, and I'm going to defend it with whatever resources I have, or it's going to be terrible and there's no way you can ever convince me otherwise.
Yeah, it doesn't help that this past few years we've really gotten really, 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 really good games. Also, that are worth of super high praise and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to skew what people sometimes expect out of like, what is the best game this year? What are some of the best things from this year? And I usually felt that the most fun times are when there's more of a nuance in conversation about what were actually the best games of this year. And the more I think about it, 2019, a year that many saw as like one of the lesser years for like the past generation, which it was sandwiched in between a year that gave people God of War and Red Dead Redemption, before that Breath of the Wild, and even 2020 that Last of Us Part 2 and its super high reception in the critic side, ignoring the fan backlash. That tends to be skewed as, if you don't have those kind of high caliber, highly reviewed game, then the year was garbage, or at least that's what people say. And that's why like 2019, I feel like now looking back, is probably the year that I've enjoyed most, because there wasn't that kind of game. Instead, there were a bunch of great games that each had their own flaws, but they were all unique in their own ways, and everything could have been like someone's game of the year. That was the year Death Stranding originally came out, Jedi Fallen Order, Resident Evil 2 remake, Sekiro, games that it could be anyone's game of the year, because they were not like the super top tier, but they were excellent, still great games, and you could have that conversation. So I think that makes it more interesting, instead of there's the blanket, here's the 10, boom, shut up. Like,
from the start of like 2010 towards 2019, I would say games progressively got much better across the board. I wouldn't know if that is the availability of certain technology to make it easier, or better resources, or more experience in the industry, but I mean, you could even say that in the grand scheme of all of entertainment, gaming is still in such its infancy.
oh yes,
Even in like the great, amazing leaps that we've made. You think about something like radio, your comics in general, your
we're in the 1950s 1960s era of gaming, where film and TV were back then. We're kind of like in that
it
area.
was still coming into its own. Like a lot of people really liked it, a lot of people really didn't, and didn't see the point of it. And I think it's just, it makes me so much more excited, because I know that even if we're looking at it from such a short-term perspective, because social media has taught us to think short-term, where things can rise and fall in a day, what gaming is going to be able to do 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, where we're all going to be in retirement homes with Smash Bros. Melee tournaments on
Do you imagine
Thursdays.
that game's gonna last that long?
I believe old people are going to be really ridiculous like that, and we as that generation would pick something like Melee to stick around.
Yeah,
for all
and that's the
those
thing.
years.
Like, I don't know if it's happening to you now that we're almost hitting 30. We've reached the point where we look back, we think
Yes.
about the days of old, and it's very hard to sometimes compartmentalize if the things that we're playing right now are the best they ever been, or we already passed the golden era of gaming. Also, for us personally, because it's so subjective, it's also such a taste thing that we can not know if this industry is like objectively in its best path yet, or if its best days are still ahead of it.
Well, you look at it like history, where a lot of people think, I know my perspective is going to be America here, but like pre-Reconstruction, pre-Civil War, Old West, everyone used to think that was like the greatest there was, just like the Wild West is right now with the GameCube, the PS2,
Mm-hmm.
the Xbox, the original Xbox,
I wouldn't even go as
and
far as
then
PS1 and N64.
yeah, and PS1 and 64, you could do anything, you could make it all, but then it also had some very heavy restrictions on what you could do. And then you move into that industrialization phase. Everything gets commodified, everything gets very factory sort of style, machined parts and everything. And some people are like, oh, the Old West was so great. But then you also gained a lot out of that. So I think it's going to be a lot of that perspective where you're getting a lot of this now where things, foundations are being built, pilings are being built on what can be done, what can't be done, but then you always have branch offs, I think.
Oh, yes. I would say this that probably the thing that makes me think fonder of older generations in a way is how much they were able to do with so little. Just think about how like relatively underpowered things like the PS2 or the Xbox or even moving to the PS3 or the 360 and even the Wii where compared to like the giant leaps in technology we got with PS4, PS5, the Xbox One, and then the X and the Series X, all of that, that it feels like when you see something very graphically intensive and all that, as impressive as it is also inherently less impressive because, you know, of course they were able to get here now. Look at the tech they have.
Right.
And then thinking like how much creativity there was when technology was also so limited, and thinking how much advancements happened in that old generation. Think about like even the PS3, like look at the original Uncharted. Look how that thing looked. And then look at The Last of Us. That like those were 4 games
same
that had
same
system, same limitations and all that, and see how much they were able to. Yeah, same company. Like how much you could extract from a stone, basically. How much water you can like extract from something. I think that's what made some of those older console generations more exciting, because now that we're in the era of the mid-gen upgrade, like the PS4 to PS Pro and then PS5 and all that, it feels like everything is a little bit more subtle in how better things are. I feel like right now in this generation, loading is the more impressive thing, and the standardization of frame rate. But those are technical stuff, not design stuff that we are still yet to see from a design perspective. What's the next leap forward?
I would argue the concept of lighting was probably the biggest jump visually that we could talk about.
Yeah, like ray tracing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say ray tracing is a bit of a caveat because as it is right now, we still have that either or situation with a lot, unless it's hardwired in, like we saw with one of our subjects later on in a second, that allows a sort of version for both. But for the most part, that isn't standardized quite yet.
Yeah, and it's also like that's kind of technology that you even need like the beefiest PCs for them to really run at like at the highest of specs and at the highest of frame rates also. So just the fact that these machines do ray tracing at all, it's at that price also, it's pretty commendable.
True. So, that's like the iRobot meme that they have going around right now where they're saying PC is better than console, and then the robot says, is your PC better than a console? And it's Will Smith going
that's awesome.
Which is true. I mean, a lot of the people, even a lot of PC people, discount the leaps and bounds that consoles are doing because they're saying they either spent $2 to $4 grand on a system that works for them, or they don't have anything good, but they're just in that culture. But then when you think about it, console is not necessarily about the raw power, but the ability to commodify it in such a simple package that can be sold for such a small amount of money.
And I feel like you kind of hit the nail on the head, is that consoles started to become more like a PC. That's why those comparisons started to become a little bit more obvious in kind of like conversation. Back then in the PS3 and 360 eras, you couldn't call those PCs. They were bespoke levels, weird hardware, like all built together in a weird machine that couldn't compare to just a normal CPU and a PC. That I think now that we're moving more into PC-like territory because everything has to scale up, everything has to look prettier and all of that. I feel that's why you get more smug comments from the PC people, because we're kind of now dealing in that territory now. So.
True. And I think that's every step console takes forward is almost like not necessarily a step back for PC, but at a certain point you can't get any better with a PC. So we'll say whatever ends up happening, PC may be able to jump forward, but I think that line is going to slowly get closer and closer until they're pretty much parallel with one another.
Yeah, but I would say like if we want to see like probably bigger leaps in technology, we have to see them in things that are not just photorealistic in a way, like one of the other things that are in their list that we'll talk about.
True. Which reminds me now, Alejandro, let's talk, at least if only a little bit, about Kena Bridge of Spirits.
Which we talked about last week a lot.
Yes, we did. So that's why I didn't want to jump too deep into it, because I know neither of us has finished it, right? You haven't finished it.
No.
Okay.
I'm taking my sweet time with it. Because
I agree. I've binged through so many games and ruined my experience with them because I wanted to say that I was done. And I realized that is not the way to go. That's no fun. It ruins the experience for myself outside of that one moment of, oh yes, I did it, let's go check out what everyone's saying on social media, and then there's like a few posts and then that's it.
Or like if they have like spoiler cast or something, I want to hear the spoiler cast just to see what they discuss and all that. I've done that many times, but it's also, especially I think, do you think inherent of the year that we barely had anything that you feel you just want to savor anything at this point and not to try to burn that?
Mix of that and the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that what I have needs to last. Especially if I plan on having children one day, I am gonna not be able to be that dad that sits back and, all right, kid, you go make your own dinner. I'm finishing the new God of War.
Yeah.
And I gotta figure out a better system for all that. So I realized that I'm gonna try stealing the time I can, but also not letting it completely obsess myself over everything going on, which actually is ironic that I say that, because one of the other things on our list today has absolutely been taking up a lot of my time, and we'll talk about that later.
Oh yeah, I know which one.
So Alejandro,
no further thoughts on Kena, like other than what I said last year. I have mentioned that was game of the year so far, but that was before I beat Deathloop, and I'm like, okay, now I think I have to really think about it once I finish this one also to see which one stood out, because Deathloop ended up surprising me having finished it and how everything came together there. But Kena still stands out to me like as a great way of a showcase of technology in a very artistic way. Like I'm awestruck at its picture level quality in everything. And as the further you go into biomes and the further you see that world develop, and I don't want it to end. Even though I know it's short, I really don't want it to end. And I'm also saving it because I have a bunch of big stuff also that I need to finish. And I mentioned that's the perfect palette cleanser last week, and I still feel that way. Like the kind of more smaller contained thing that you play after you've done the big thing. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're taking your time as well. I've realized just the little things like the meditation circles, the ability to take pictures, but then it like keeps the animations going, so you can pick the exact moment, and every other character in the game reacts to you taking a picture next to them, and they'll make a pose as well. They'll smile, they'll make something. So of course Rufus the giant bull even like kind of turns towards the camera, and I was enjoying the heck out of that.
Do you know what other game does like a photo mode where then characters would pose?
Not off the top of my head. I know Ghost of Tsushima you could force it, but it wasn't.
Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh gosh, you're right.
Yeah. Especially if you put it in like selfie mode, and then the character they would pose and all that. It's been 2 years, Paul, since you finished Kingdom Hearts 3. Don't feel too bad.
Oh, I feel like I just finished blocking a lot of that out of my head, and it's I enjoyed that game so much too. It was just too much for my brain. Well, yeah, so I'm not going to say too much about Kena, but I'm enjoying it. I want the next sequel. The same reaction I had when I finished Jedi Fallen Order. And I was just like, I can't wait till they make another one with all of this stuff and then more things. And it's the same with Kena. And I really hope they get the resources they deserve. They get the backing they deserve. Sony needs to give them a blank check right now to get whatever they need or whatever debt they had to go into to make this game. What are you gonna say?
They mentioned that Kina may also appear on Xbox and Switch soonish, like in the near
So it's not
future.
like a specific. I mean,
The
that's
more
my
people
other.
can play it, the more people can play it, the better. But
that's true.
Sony deserves credit for having given the money to kickstart this. Like
that's fair, yeah. And if that's the case, I mean, if it's a timed exclusive series, then that's fine with me as well. I mean, because we still have like Ori and the Will of the Wisps that was just PC and Xbox, right?
And then it moved to Switch.
Oh, the Switch, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the only time that the only system that it hasn't moved to has been PlayStation. Unlike Cuphead, that also started on Xbox, then moved to Switch, then it's now on PlayStation. So who knows? Maybe Ori will also join that.
I would like to, because
the more people can play Ori, the better. Please, people play Ori. Ori's fantastic, especially the first one. Second one's also great, but the first one's special.
And I still have like no context for the series somehow. Nobody's really talked about the plot details. It's just, it looks fun. It looks really smooth. And one day I'd love to play it.
It's serene. It's one of the most serene experiences in a platformer. Also a very tough platformer. I'll say that. So, but it's not too, it's like, it can be punishing, but it's not super punishing. It's like the Meat Boy kind of punishing that one more. I need to do it again. I need to do it again. I'll
pretty punishing.
Yes.
But in something that's not too punishing, Spider-Man Remastered.
So yeah, how you do it? And like how far into you with Spider-Man Remastered?
I finished the episode where Jeff Davis showed up, the Miles' dad.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're early.
So yeah, I'm pretty early.
You're still on Act 1.
I was kind of enjoying myself, and then I got onto like a party chat with one of my friends, and I just swung around the city again while I talked to him. But
it's so relaxing doing that, right? Just like swinging around, like doing like collecting the backpacks and all that.
It feels so good because that's basically what I was doing. I would just open the map, tag an area in that general direction of where I needed to go to get like a backpack or a new part of the map or whatever, because story and then like combat kind of took a little too much of my focus to be able to talk. So I would just do that, and I cleared out like a whole horizontal swath through the map because it was just fun. And then like you get good enough where you're swinging, in mid-swing you like take out your camera and snap a shot real quick, and then you're gone.
Yes.
And
it's
then
so
all of a sudden
it's so frictionless being able to do that.
It's fantastic, and I know that game has spoiled any other Spider-Man game that's come out before it.
Absolutely.
There's no way I could ever go back.
I played many of those this year because there was
not this year.
No, yeah, but this year because there was barely anything that came out this year. I still didn't have a PS5 at the time, so I was like, I'm kind of like on an old game bench. I'm gonna play all these old Spider-Man games I had. So I went through Spider-Man 3, Web of Shadows, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Those games, with the exception of Web of Shadows, those games suck. They really suck. Like now that we know what a really great one is, those games really don't hold up well. Especially Spider-Man 3. Like Spider-Man 3 is like borderline atrocious, and it's even worse on PS2. And I played the PS3 version. And Web of Shadows has amazing combat and a really bonkers story, but it's also highly repetitive.
Wild, but I would say it's probably the closest thing we would get to a one-to-one comic storyline put into a game. Because it's just very comic Marvel comics
insanity. Yeah, and it has all the characters that appear there, and then you can also play with the black suit and switch at times, and you make decisions. I think Web of Shadows is kind of underrated in a way. I think that's one of the more fun Spider-Man games that came out in that 360 era. But yeah, this Insomniac Spider-Man game, like I had only played it once back in 2018. We're 3 years since this game came out. Think about that, Paul. We passed the 3-year anniversary a few weeks back.
Some of those 3 years, you look at it and it looks very dated. Spider-Man looks so good,
especially even in remaster form. It's like, you didn't think they've made improvements until you actually play it. And I beat it again fully, like completed the campaign. I'm actually playing through the City That Never Sleeps DLC. I have to finish the
Black. You burned through that.
Yeah, And also, I think I enjoyed it even more now because I am not platinuming the game like I did before.
True.
So like I devoured back in 2018 this game, but when you have to do like 5 random crimes in every district over and over and over again, you have to do the Harry Osborn like lab
That's easily
things.
one of the worst things in that
Especially
game.
if you're trying to do them all at once, it can get really tedious. And I'm sorry to realize that I have a problem with wanting to 100% games sometimes, that can come at the expense of my enjoyment with the game. Another example
Yes.
of that is Ghost of Tsushima. So again, another game that I platinumed, and I usually go for platinums of games I'm really enjoying, but I fear that whenever you try to platinum something, you risk the lasting taste of that game to be disgust. And
Yeah.
I felt a little bit like that with Spider-Man because I platinum and then came back later for the DLC, but because I wasn't in the practice, that DLC was so hard. Like because combat in that game later on can get a little tricky, especially in that
It
DLC.
really is. I actually, for me, it was like I would get hit once or not at all, or I would get plastered. And it is so much of that. I realize where they improved upon like the Arkham style of combat is it matches Spider-Man's character.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like Batman
He's
is
so
going to
nimble.
counter
Yeah,
and turn it around and directly like crush somebody's kneecaps. Spider-Man
it's
only
about
has a dodge
swing.
move.
Exactly. It only
It
has a
is,
dodge movement, and you have to keep attacking. That's
yeah,
because if you're trying to play it as Arkham Asylum, which is mostly waiting for that counter, it's not as
right.
fun. And in that game, you have to like always be in the move, always pressing triangle to like web yourself into a different enemy, build your
Yeah.
meters, use the things. It's like remembering all of that. I was like, man, this is so fun. Why had I forgotten how fun this game is? And more importantly, how amazing, no pun intended,
Yeah.
spectacular the story is. Like that's I would say like pacing wise, it can get a little too hung up on some unnecessary stuff. Like I feel the pacing grinds to a halt whenever you have to play as MJ or Miles.
Yeah.
But at least the actual narrative of that story is touching, is well written, and it does so well in like building a relatively new villain for people that don't read comics, like Mr. Negative, to the point that he and Otto Octavius are the only ones that get a lot of development because of how important it like nails the story thread and the humanity of each character. No one is other than the Sinister Six. No one there is a villain just because it's a villain. Norman Osborn is doing all his heinous stuff because he wants to save his son.
Right.
Like Otto Octavius got robbed by Norman, and he wants like retribution because a lot of his successes were taken by someone. I feel that. I understand that. Like
Mm-hmm.
even same as Martin Lee, like the experimentations they did on him, like took his family from him, and he
Yeah.
wants that kind of retribution. So it's like you understand all these character motivations instead of just being like the mustache twirling villain. And the ending, obviously you haven't replayed it, but that ending sequence hits still so hard.
It really
Like it like
does.
in a way that final like bit resonates with me more than any Spider-Man movie. I always said that this version of Spider-Man is probably my favorite interpretation of the character. Like in every way, shape, or form, even from MJ to Peter
Mm-hmm.
himself. It
Yep.
takes the best inspirations of like all the best versions, but this is so uniquely it. And it was a good reminder for that, and not having to worry about platinum the game because I transferred my save, so I got all the trophies immediately from PS4. So I was
Oh.
like, I got the platinum again, so I can just play and have fun.
Wow.
So you could do that if you had the
I didn't
PS4
even
version.
think about that. Because it didn't like show an option to transfer the save. And I was like, oh,
R1,
whatever, I'll just
you have to
start the
click
game.
R1. It's
I should have known.
but you have to like have the PS4 version and upload your save to a cloud. Again, this is like the completely asinine way that
Yeah.
PlayStation handle like save transfer compared to the smart delivery thing. But I want to finish playing that DLC. I also want to like clean up Miles Morales also because I only played it on PS4. I want to play the PS5 version to platinum completion also. I'm on a
It
Spider-Man high.
does. I I guess just briefly touching on Miles, because like I played it a little bit right before I got the remastered version, obviously, because while I was downloading, I was just like, well, I might as well swing around and
Yeah,
play the game again.
because you have to buy a remaster through Miles. There's
Through,
no way to
yeah.
buy it after outside of that.
So I definitely realized that, like I had told you, I binged through the storyline so much, and like you said, I definitely missed out on all the really good side quest stuff because I thought it was going to be similar to Spider-Man 2018.
Yeah. And side quest is where Miles Morales heavily improved over 2018, because I also did all the side quests in this replay and they're fine, but there's actual great story content in the Miles story, especially story content that eventually doubles back and circles back around to Jefferson Davis, who was what happened to him in this game. That's incredibly touching.
That was a bold decision because I thought that was just, okay, so that's like comics.
No,
but apparently it's the only time that it's they kind of went that direction with.
And the thing that happens with Anne May also, Insomniac took chances here.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's Miles. If you just mainline through that story, the story is not as good as a story that like 2018. 2018 is a much better story. I can say that now. But Miles' story is better paced and has better little moments. So I think both games complement each other well. Before I was like more in the Miles Morales is just the better game. But this time I'm like, yeah, both of these games are great, especially now that they're together in PS5.
And I like that they're so different because now when like Spider-Man 2, that what we theorize is going to be mostly Peter with bursts of Miles Morales in there, those gameplays are going to be so different jumping from one to the other. It's not going to be a one-to-one, hey, look, it's just Spider-Man again with a different suit. Let's do something else. And there's maybe a different voice attached, but it's like totally different.
Yeah, and who even knows if it's going to be like bursts of Miles? Maybe they're equally going to be as equally divided. And I always said that at least from moveset in gameplay, Miles is much more fun than Peter.
I do like
just because of the venom powers,
experienceness of it, where he stumbles when he tries to take somebody out because he's like holding him up, and he kind of bursts forward. He hits somebody and like kind of he's stumbling a little bit. I really like that. I love the character that he's kind of into right now.
It's the tiny things that help the game not feel like you're just a palette swap of the same character. They may have the same stance as when they're walking and running, but the actual punches and kicks that they do, they're so subtly different that they all feel unique to each other.
I'm gonna say one thing though, a little bit of a hot take. I don't know if I like Miles' suit.
Really?
There's something about it I'm not.
I love it.
Okay, in general, I love it. Fantastic. I don't know why this iteration doesn't have as much of what I like about it. I don't know. Because with Peter's, I had to get used to his new one. I did not like it at
with
first.
With the big white one.
The big white Spider-Man logo. And I really had to get into it, and even now I just choose not to play as that one usually.
That's the one I play with. I forced myself to like it, and I like it now.
I like it because I love in the cutscenes that he gets his little actual emotions through his eyes. Excuse me, but Miles there's something about like the roundness of his face, and like he looks more filled out in it. Than I would think he should be, especially if he's on the younger side. Like, I guess I like the Into the Spider-Verse look so much.
The more thinner,
he's like
slimmer
really
version.
lanky. He's really small. And granted, like Miles in this one is more like 17, 18, so he would be a little bigger. But I don't know. I do kind of wish there was just a little bit more of a body type difference between the two of them. Even if like they're just a little bit of age difference.
If you look at the Spider-Man 2 trailer, I think they actually fixed that. Because they're standing next to each other.
Right, and there was clearly like a height difference, which I appreciated. But I don't know why, like in Miles Morales, he looked like he was taller and big. And then I was just like, I thought this guy was supposed to be like a kid.
He looks a kid to me, but I could have just have been biased because I just enjoy that game a lot. So
there is one also thing. His face looks super janky right when they revealed him in 2018's remastered version. I don't know what it was, but he had this weird, like, kind of
smile.
Weird face.
When he takes the picture of the helicopter and he turns around and then like
when he turns around, I was like, what the heck did they do to you?
I will say even in remaster form with 2018, you look at Miles Morales, you can see where graphically that game took a lift up. Like
That's true.
they did a good job with Remastered.
Absolutely. And did you have any other final thoughts on
Spider-Man's still a phenomenal game. I would say now I think I'm even more high on Spider-Man than I was before. That I think is just behind God of War to me now as the best PlayStation exclusive. Before it was like number 5 in like a huge list. But I feel even more about it now.
If it's not my first, it's like got to be my second, alongside maybe Uncharted 4 and I don't even know what else. Yeah, Ghost of Tsushima.
Those are your 3 that you always like.
I think Spider-Man's going to be number 1, Ghost of Tsushima 2, and
Uncharted 4 number 3. Yeah,
3, just because of how strong that ending was for me. But anyway, speaking of really janky lifelike models, we're on to Death Stranding director's cut. I'm being a little unfair to it right at the start because I will say to everybody listening, I was very mean to Death Stranding when it came out. I have since learned to like it. And then today I spent about 4 hours playing it on episode 3 still, or chapter 3. And I questioned my life decisions. I sat there and I went, I'm not actually, like, I don't feel like I'm any further in progression in this game, because at a certain point, the side stuff doesn't really give you anything outside of like the likes. Right. But like, I didn't need to order any new equipment. I just kept using the same truck. I just rolled over everything. And then I was like, oh shoot, I'm taking the fun out of this. I got to change things up right now or continue the story. But then right as that was happening, we decided to start recording. So I was like, okay, well, if I come back to it, I need to make sure I do some different things.
That game has aged like fine wine, hasn't it? After the 2018 with this one.
Better. Yes. The faces still look really weird. Every time I look at Fragile or Amelie's face, it doesn't look like they're actually looking at Sam. They're just kind of like unfocused, looking off into the distance.
That's so weird because
weird puffy eye.
I'm playing it on quality mode with the black bars that from the widescreen, and I had my parents pass by and be like, "What movie is that?" That's how look all those characters are. It's like, wow. This is not a movie. This is a game.
Maybe I need to do some changing to my TV screen, because sometimes it looks like their faces are like almost too reflective, especially when they're crying. It's just like, water is one of the hardest things that you could possibly do, especially when you do lifelike stuff, and then you put in plot reasons for them to cry every time they use their powers, and it's just like, this looks like a wax model of somebody crying, and it honestly freaks me out. Very.
If you're playing on performance mode that has lower resolution, I can see that happening. And I would say the only time the character models look weird is if they are in a very high contrast area, that there's too much white in it. The characters look unreal when there's like a little bit of shadow in it. Like when there's like a mix of shadow, that game just looks absolutely unreal.
Like, I'll say
back then and even more now.
Yeah. I will say, like, Sam looks great. I don't know why they decided to do his little ponytail thing, because whenever he has his hair down, he looks fantastic, and it looks just like Norman Reedus. Like, especially, I got his little lifelike sunglasses from his real life, and it just looks, it's just him. But, and like you said, it's when there's high contrast, they just look washed out. There's something wrong about it. But if you get the right shadows in, it's like more natural lighting, they look fantastic. The problem that I'm finding is that, why would they have all of their biggest emotional conversation moments in the private room, which is a white room with harsh lighting? If you're going to do that, you would think that you'd want to make that setting as cinematic as possible first, and then allow
like
for
at the white, like at the fake White House with the president, with Bridget the president.
Yeah, that looks great.
And
all of the actual cinematics in there. But then when you have like Fragile talking to Sam in the private room, you have Dead Man showing up, and it's just that harsh lab lighting on all of their conversations. It's like, oh, guys, you're killing me here. But then I'm sure like Heartman was one of my favorite characters. So once we get to him and his little library, that's gonna be awesome.
The snow, when you're like
The
in the snow
snow
area.
area, yeah. And then like Mama's lab, I think hers was darker if I'm remembering
Oh
right.
yeah, and the big cutscene
Um,
that with her zoomed in is like one of the most like
mhm.
unsettling realistic things like that game
Her face
portrays.
is unsettling sometimes
Yeah.
because she has like these huge lips. She just stares at you with these like doughy eyes, and she's like, "Help me, Sam.
Yeah. Now
Please bring the things." Anyway,
that whole like your hang up with the visuals aside, like how do you
yeah,
feel that game holds up as the mailman simulator in a lockdown society 2 years later?
yeah. I
That's what that's
will.
the part that I'm like, wow. It's like it really I knew it would just because everything that happened last year, but not playing it again is like holy crap.
I will clarify. I'm being super unfair to the game. I'm super nitpicky right now, just because I'm enjoying myself. But um, the every time they mention like the apocalypse of something happening, but like they're just vague enough that they don't talk about what it was, it sounds like they're just talking about 2020.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, all right, well, we can't have anybody outside, people are too afraid to go outside. We need you to like really bridge things for us. We really need to come together as a people. We're not going to survive this. Like, we need to get over ourselves and accept certain things
And this was
are
the
different
script. This
now.
was the script as is in
Yeah,
2019. Yeah, they haven't
it's
changed anything.
unchanged. So it just, that feeling of holy crap. And then I know it's more out in the wilds, but whenever they're in a city, that's when it hits for me, especially because I remember walking around my city right when 2020 was beginning, and COVID started fully in full swing, and the deserted streets, the quiet, you
That
would
game
have
they nails the
um,
quietness.
that
My
unnerving feeling. Something that I did not know at all during the first playthrough of Death Stranding that I found out in my second is that every single BT looks different. Did you know that?
yeah.
I didn't, because I was so focused on trying to like secretly avoid them with my little crouch, and I never used any of the weapons against them. And I was like, I was jipping myself of that whole combat scenario, because most of the time I would have a vehicle, and you're not just gonna get out of the vehicle to run through, shoot the BTs, and then keep driving or something.
It's like many Kojima
This
games,
time,
there's hidden depth that you didn't know was there until you
yeah.
find out. You're like, wow.
But then like, so you'd have your normal size BTs, but then you have infant BTs, and then obese BTs, and all of like the different people that died. Because like I wasn't really listening either when they exposited all that information, that a BT is just when somebody dies and a BT gets to it, it creates a new BT. It's not actually what wait, let me think. It's not what causes a void out, it turns out. It's when a BT eats a living person that it causes a void out, technically.
That enters
So,
necrosis, something they call necrosis.
right. And the
That's why they have to like
necrosis,
fire them.
which I found out you can not only burn them, but you throw them into the tar lake, and that does the same thing. Um, so you can kill as many enemies as you want. You don't have to go to the incinerator. You just have to bring them to the edge of like any tar pit and then drop them in, and then they're gone. Which is like funny
That's
little
cool.
details
Yeah,
that
that's
you
cool
don't
because you don't feel too bad
realize.
about playing it as an action game and killing those people, huh?
Well, I don't actually. I haven't killed anybody because it's so easy to not. Because like the bolo gun is like a one-hit knockout instantly on like any human enemy you come across,
And that's
and
the
then
director cut edition, right? That bolo
yes,
gun, yeah.
no,
Or
that
was it?
was
Or
that
was
was
it
in
in the
the
original?
original. The
Yeah,
mazer gun that they give you was new, and apparently initially it was there, but like you get it way later in the game, so they just give it to you really early to help you out. um the I didn't like that one as much because you had to very specifically have the reticle on the person, and if not, it like used up your ammo but then you had to like realign it, and like it basically only worked if you had the reticle on the person completely. You couldn't kind of like sweep it across. But anyway,
it's like Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah,
Metal Gear was like that.
And just the the ability to like hold the luggage and kind of just swing and throw, like that was my main source of fighting in the previous times. But then being able to go into the virtual room helped me understand the timing needed for like the rope, and so I can parry like anybody at this point. And it was so funny. The only thing I wish is if they'd given me one of those cool electro staffs. That would have been fantastic, being able to like javelin that to somebody and knock them out with the stun shot.
I mean, don't you know if it's not in the game? Because who knows, maybe there is.
That would be great if it was, but I don't think it is based on whatever I was looking up. But there are things that people haven't found yet. Like I found out the Cyberpunk 2077 motorbike is in the game.
They added that for the PC version last year. So.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay, so yeah, you have that, and then little V lines that you can put on Sam, and I think there might be some other things. But excuse me, it's part of the fun is finding all the new stuff and then accidentally stumbling across new stuff at the same time.
Like you're finding out Jeff Keighley's in the game?
Right. Well, I mean, that was supposed to be in there already, I think. But I know, just didn't know like, who he was.
Exactly.
I knew like Conan O'Brien and stuff being in there. Was like
Herman Holtz. Nice. Herman, like Sony Worldwide Studios. Herman Holtz is in the game also.
Really?
Yeah.
Where's he at?
You'll find him right now in chapter 3. Yeah, you'll find him there.
Okay, then I've probably seen him, because sometimes it looks like somebody looks iconic enough that I'm like, that looks like it would have been a person that I should know.
This was Kojima's vanity project where he invited every friend that he could, and everyone was in the game.
And it's
even
really
if it's
funny.
not device.
You have people that absolutely look super boring, but like that's reality, where the chiral artist's mom looks like I could have bumped into her at my local grocery store. Because she's got like the Karen hairstyle, the very basic white lady in her 50s kind of look to her face. I don't know why she would be white and then her daughter would be an Asian girl, but I mean, hey, maybe she's biracial. Which actually, that there's something that I know that I learned in the lore because I decided to read some of it. It turns out there is an in-universe explanation for almost all of the characters being asexual. I was reading through all the mail.
Yeah.
I was reading through what is it? The memory chips. They give you access to like data and lore and stuff. One of those is an explanation for how when the Death Stranding happened, it caused people to not seek out connections with others. And it led to very few people actually being interested in people. And this is like a 5-paragraph, several page document. And I was just like, this is
insane.
So weirdly descriptive and specific. But then it's like, I guess it kind of explains why so many people just don't have an interest in each other, and there's also not really that many characters to begin with, honestly. But I do want to look up Sam's condition. Deadman said the name of it at the start of the game, and it sounds specific enough to be real.
Yeah, you'll keep hearing it even all the way till the end.
It started with an A, I knew that, but what I wasn't sure is if it was a phobia or like an actual medical condition with him, because it sounds like they were talking about it like he was just afraid of being touched by people, but then every time somebody touches him, it leads like an actual scar.
Yeah, you probably forgotten because I think your mind thinks about the ending of the game and you being preached by Amelie for like an hour and 30 minutes. All of that explanation happens after the preaching. So you probably tune all of that out. So.
Okay, yeah, I probably just dropped off then. I'm going to have to look up exactly how to get through that spot as fast as possibly as possible, because if I don't, I'm gonna lose my mind again, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to hate Amelie, but I do, and she's the whole reason this is happening. Everyone just yells at Sam, and he's just like, "I'm a UPS guy. I don't know what's going on."
So I don't know if you know this about the actress that plays Amelie. Like, actual Amelie is like a de-aged version of Lindsay Wagner, who is the president of this game, because she's an old actress. So they've aged her down.
That crap confused the heck out of me, because the first time I played it, I was like, so is Amelie the same person as Bridget? Because I could see in her face that it was the same. But then I was like, so is she is she real? Is she fake? Was she Sam's sister?
It's the same actress. It's just that the president, Bridget, like the older version of her, that's how she actually looks in real life,
right?
Or at least
so they just created and then they made out of that.
Yes, and then the Amelie version, they just de-aged her like Marvel style into what she used to look back in her Bionic Woman days,
right? So I guess that's why they really wanted, because man, there's just so much of this game, I guess, because it's so spread out between the like your chapter 3s, your chapter 5s of like really meaty delivery stuff, that by the time I've kind of finished that and go on to the next spot, I've kind of forgotten everything that happened.
It's a dense game.
But it's so weird because I remember very vividly certain things like the terrorist organization and Fragile's whole story.
Higgs,
that dude, it's so funny because he has like this weird country accent, but then it just sounds like Troy Baker straight up. And I've heard so much of him now that I'm like, good lord. I mean, I swear, if Higgs pauses the cutscene in the middle of his monologue and just starts talking about his time playing Last of Us again, I'm gonna lose it. He's like, hey guys.
Yeah, Troy Baker's everywhere, right?
He is. But like, props to him for.
He's still one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite voice actors.
He's fantastic. Just the fact that he can do what he did with the Joker and Batman Arkham Origins.
And again in Long Halloween.
I never saw that. That came out, didn't it?
Yeah, that came out. Yeah. Both parts. You should watch that.
I should, because I always end up choosing the worst of those animated movies. Like I watched Assault on Arkham and I just didn't like it.
Really? I like that one, but
I liked it when Batman finally showed up. The first half of it was kind of weak.
You didn't want to be dealing with the Suicide Squad then.
I am Suicide Squadded out right now. Outside of the James Gunn version right now, I feel like they're a little overhyped as a group. I don't think I could justifiably believe that any of them are competent enough to do certain things. They're like, yeah, you're here to beat Superman. I was like, what is Harley Quinn gonna do to Superman? All right.
Yeah, especially I can't wait to see how they do that in the game, which we'll hear about it soon in a month.
Only a month?
Yeah, in a month for DC fandom. We'll hear about that and Gotham Knights.
I'm more interested in Gotham Knights, honestly. I really hope that's good. I really want to see how they handle the traversal for all that, because it looks a little.
And I bet you also like it because Nightwing is a character, and you've been reading the Tom Taylor Nightwing book, right?
I have, and I also really like the modern telling of Jason Todd, because they've really like shaved off a lot of his edges, where he's still a good guy. He's not like the Punisher anymore. He's just like a dude that's willing to kill, but then people don't really take him seriously, so he's just like kind of doing his own thing.
I've been on a Nightwing high and also kind of Jason Todd high because of Titans, also the DC show Titans that's on HBO Max. I think they nailed Nightwing and Jason Todd there. So
really, because I know a lot of people were complaining about Robin, how he used to be
initially, because it was a very edgy version of Robin that then, especially with the Dick Grayson one, that eventually like it's justified within that show. Okay. But it's like completely different. I mean, he's a dude that he's like so hard edged because of trauma that he has suffered while being Robin for Batman there, that
Right.
he deals with enemies so brutally that one guy, he literally one dude is like threatening another of the heroes to cut the balls out with the garden shears, and then he just grabs and stabs the dude in the balls and takes him. It's like, it's so
I think I saw that scene
yeah,
actually
I
on
saw you.
YouTube.
I showed you that. I linked that to our group. They'd be like, man, to think this
That's
is where
probably how
Titan
that.
started.
Mm,
So, but it's like, they moved on from that. I think they initially is very off-putting, but I think when you make it work on your story, it works as a way of him like
yeah.
shedding off that darkness, and because it's like a more extreme version of him finding light. But he was
Okay, so it does kind of pull away from that as the
absolutely. Oh
seasons
yes, oh
go.
yes. That was just in season 1.
Oh,
So
okay, cool. Because I know that was like the last I heard of it, and that season 2 was like better, but a little more of the same.
it was better
And
and
then,
worse. It was better and worse in season 1. It was like better tonally, worse in focus. It has an amazing Superboy episode. Like, you should like look it up in HBO Max and just find the 6th episode of season 2 and watch. It's just called Connor. See how they deal with Superboy. It's amazing.
okay,
Like Zach and I, we always geek out over that episode because it's so perfect. The dude looks like he's ripped straight out of the comic, the
dang.
Superboy that they did in that show. So
I still remember reading through pretty much all of the new 52 Superboy, where he had like the weird black with red neon lights on his
yeah.
suit.
And this one
I
is the
love
one
that.
with the normal jeans and black t-shirt with
Yeah,
the S.
of like
That's the
Young
Superboy.
Justice. But
Yeah, that's
I love every iteration of him.
yeah. But that's Stranding. So we go with
Yeah.
that. Then,
Um,
unlike you, I haven't played as much of the director's cut because I was cleaning up Deathloop and Spider-Man Remastered. Just kind of be like, I want to clean out all this stuff so I can just like feel like I can dedicate so much. Just in the almost 5 hours I played of the Stranding director's cut, it was just, I feel more mesmerized by it now that me and my family go on hikes. In fact, I literally today in today's hike that I went with my family, I put the Lore soundtrack. It works so perfect. It's so
good.
perfect for a hike. It's like it nails that feel. I feel like this game more, it doesn't get enough credit at how it gamifies traversal. Like
It
how the
does.
fun of the gameplay is like you figuring out the way as you go. If you're just a gamer that is just about I have to like take this to the destination, that's all that matters. You miss out the forest for the trees of the in between and how much fun there is if you really study your terrain, plan your terrain, all of that. I feel like more people are getting more in tune to that now because they understand what this game is instead of thinking what it isn't. And again, we talked about the stories like this is Metal Gear Solid 2 levels of I can't believe this predicted that this so succinctly predicted the future. And I can't wait to play more like once I'm done with all this stuff because there's nothing else coming out right now that I really, really care. So,
Yeah. And since Battlefield is being delayed more, Call of Duty is not something that either of us is really thinking
mhm.
of, and Destiny's just
beta
kind of going
beta
on.
for
The beta
Battlefield.
is October 8th and 9th. I'm absolutely going to be playing a little bit of that because the little trailer that I saw looks very, very nice.
Yeah, I just want to see how it feels and if I can prop the mustard to buy a multiplayer only Battlefield game at that price because it looks so good. It really looks.
Let's face it though, they've all been really multiplayer only. I don't even really count 1 or 2 or 5 having really a
campaign.
storyline. It's like I'll give it 1 because they were like the mini campaigns with their own stuff, but 5 was like one mission and that was it. And then
It was 3 and then they added a 4th one that sucked.
oh no, I mean like 1 each, and then they were like a total of like 4 or 5. But that wasn't really anything.
Yeah, 1
good.
nailed it, 5 blew it. So
Yeah. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. I am looking for more of Death Stranding. I really want to unlock more of the things. At this point, it's really fun still, like going along and just like spamming the touch button to like people's things as I run by.
It's incredible how overly positive that game is. How it strives for that positivity. It resonates more now in a world more divided.
Sometimes it can come across as trite, where they're like, "Sam, thank you so much," and I'm like, "Get out of here with your sarcasm," but I realize that's my own cynicalness.
Yeah, it's like this game's not cynical. That's incredible.
And,
like it's not cynical.
It's really funny whenever you reach somebody that's like, get your crap out of here, man. Like, I don't want to be a part of the UCA. And then you do one thing for them, they're like, sign me up.
Yeah. If only the world was that easy, right?
I
That
know.
eeriness, but
They're like, oh, my wife's dead, and there's nothing you could do to fix this. And they're like, oh, guys, we found this wife. We can figure this out. I was like, how did you find her?
yes.
But it's funny how all of the negative problems in their world can be like very quickly turned. But honestly, I respect it a lot more now for what it is. The aesthetic is pleasing and awesome. The vibe is awesome.
The needle drops of the music at the perfect amount of time.
I need to figure out how to actually like play music while I'm running, because I couldn't figure that out, but I want to.
Yeah, I think it's perfect when the game does it for you, because I don't know how it nails exactly when to really like hit you with that sense of nirvana of the like that Bone song, like when you're carrying the president as the camera zooms out and it hits you, it's like, oh, here, I'm in now.
It took me a little longer, honestly, because carrying the president was really frustrating because you kept like leaning to the left and right and stuff. But for me, I think it was when I started like really getting a couple things, especially when I get my bike. I love getting on that bike, and the fact that they added a few things that make the bike more viable is very enticing to me, because it used to be just like, all right, get the truck and that's the best thing to get.
A quick question. Do you still have adaptive triggers enabled?
Yes, I never changed that.
I feel this game is probably one of my favorite uses of it. It works so realistically with how much weight you have. It feels more immersive.
If I like don't notice it as much, maybe.
Don't you like try to carry a bunch of crap and it gets harder to like pull them, and it's like, interesting. It just feels more immersive. It's just more immersive.
Yeah. My stormtrooper is getting censored. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the feel of it.
The vibration changing
vehicles.
Yeah, the vibration changes depending on the terrain that you're walking. It's kind of like Astro's Playroom also.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like Kojima with tech. Give Kojima tech, he always will maximize your tech in weird, interesting ways.
I mean, even back from the PS1, he's been doing it and utilizing all of the tech possible in very weird, dumb ways sometimes. And with that, I think we'll probably wrap up on that one. And I have one question for our topic that I don't think is going to take us too long.
Go for it.
But we're going to segue slightly. Let me get this out here. All right. You know, I'm going to make it simple today, because we got to talk a lot about some other things going on.
Yeah, I thought the thing that we talked about Deathloop was almost topic-wise when we talked about the masterpiece. I was like, you insert it there.
Yeah. I would say think about all of the games that you've ever played, Alejandro.
Oh, yeah.
And I want you to think of an experience of a game or style of game that you expected not to like, but actually very much enjoyed.
That's
something
Stranding.
that is okay. So wait, hang on. Let me back this up real quick.
It's so easy for
I knew you would say that, and I was trying to say nothing we've already talked about today.
Okay.
And then you jumped out of it.
I have another one though. But yeah.
All right, let's hear it.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Hey, okay. Yeah. All right, now tell me why.
It was at a time where that's technically an open world game, if you really think about it that way. It's just a boss rush game where the bosses are puzzles. And my feeble mind in 2005 was still too young and too unprepared for the nature of puzzles in games. That's why Zelda games at the time were a little tough for me. But that game, like, I feel that game like taught me a lot in using logic and environment and skill to figure it out. I didn't expect that I would like a game with so much solitude in it. I was used to more games always being like more busy at that time, because those were the kind of games I would always play. they're small, that there's always something happening. That game is very austere and serene in its emptiness. That actually Death Stranding reminds me a lot of that. In its like emptiness, they almost feel like they're cut from the same cloth almost. And yeah, and the Shadow of the Colossus, yeah, and just the idea of how singular it is, just a boss rush. I was like, huh. So this game is nothing more than this. But in its few things that it does so much that game still stuck with me forever. That's my answer. Shadow of the Colossus.
I accept this decision. Not one that I expected, but that all of a sudden made me think of like, what if Death Stranding, as an improvement to the game, instead of the boss battles we have, Death Stranding is identical in every way except they have Shadow of the Colossus style bosses, where
That
he
would
has
be
to use the traversal abilities that he's learned and like climbing hooks and ladders or something to get on a giant BT and
the
puzzle his
BT
way
are the
through
big
it.
monsters throughout the world
Yeah,
that they've brought it
but
to
then
its
it's
knees.
like they're giant, they're colossaling. They're walking through the wastelands, and you have to really watch out. I mean, they even had one that's giant, but like you don't really fight it till the end.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, because Higgs sends you that big one like
Yeah.
near the end. Yeah.
But then imagine if all of that had been like across the board on a bigger scale, and you've been able to do that instead of just throw grenades at them.
Yeah, but also kind of like I mentioned, Death Stranding before you put the stipulation of not something that we had just talked about or played. But Death Stranding was like when I started seeing the gameplay, and once like the curtain was lifted, and be like, wait, you're actually a mailman. When that like really hit us, like, this is a delivery game. I didn't know I was gonna like it. Be like, I love Kojima. I love because Metal Gear is like one of my favorite series, if not my favorite franchise ever. Would I be able to like accept all this? And I was surprised how much Death Stranding connected with me in 2019, and even in the little bit that I play right now, just feeling that was like, it's still crazy that a mailman delivered Uber driver simulator
True.
like can resonate like that. And Shadow of the Colossus was like that before, like a game that looking at it from the outside is like, I don't know if I would like this, but then playing it to be like, oh, I'm glad I did, because these are two of my favorite games ever. So
true.
For having given them that
I
chance.
accept that. That's those are some good answers.
What about you? What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to
Yeah, I want to hear yours.
So my weirdest ones, there are two of them actually. The first is NBA 2K16.
Okay.
I am not a sports playing guy. I mean, as a kid, we all dabbled in it. You had your Maddens, you had that stuff.
FIFAs.
FIFAs, yeah. And then I watched, I don't know why it was recommended to me, but on YouTube it was like a top 5 of like their online court 5 versus 5 games. And the stuff that they could pull off in that game was so bonkers that I went, this sounds amazing, because like I didn't know that you could create your own person, and I didn't know you could like play online, and I didn't know how in depth all of the basketball was with the way you could change things, because in the past all it was all right, you had your pass button, your shoot button, special pass button, and that was kind of it, maybe like a sprint. But when I started this game up and I made my character and I'm doing things, most of your movements are through the right stick. Everything with the way you dribble is like you can do like a double back, a back quarter circle to the right. You can do like a 360 spin. You can do a lot of like these crazy input commands with it. And that is how you shoot as well. Like by holding the stick up, you do a certain kind of shot. If you hold it back, you do another kind of shot entirely. And just the things you could do. They had a button for no look passes that if you hit, like you double tap the circle button and then hit the right stick a certain way, you will do like an elbow behind the back shot to somebody. And the possibilities of being able to do something like that like enraptured me during that year. And I got super obsessed with it to the point that every like 2 years I'll buy the next NBA game. So my last one was actually 2K19 or 20. I don't remember which, but now we're on 2022. So I think it was 20. that I bought. And it's crazy because like if you actually max out your character, they give you a credit towards the next game, which is something that I didn't realize was a thing at all. But then also every once in a while they'll have a sale that you can buy the game that's come out for like 6 months now, and they'll give you a bunch of the credits currency so you can have a better character. And just the fun that I didn't expect to have but actually did was really, it was wholesome and enjoyable when I didn't have to worry about doing anything crazy outside of shooting a ball into a hoop. And then similarly was Tekken 7. I had never played any of the Tekken games.
Really? Not even in an arcade?
I was not allowed to when I was younger because they weren't wearing wholesome outfits. Also, it kind of intimidated me. I didn't know what I was doing, and it didn't seem fun to me to like waste some of the short amount of money that I would get for an arcade on like mashing buttons and then not seeing what I wanted to happen out of it. And it wasn't until one of my roommates would play Tekken Tag Tournament and just religiously, like constantly, he was really high ranked. He just did that as his fun thing. And when the 7th one came out, he was like super excited about it. So I was like, all right, let's see what this is about. Bought it full price, and I was just like, no expectations. And both the fact that it has this bonkers storyline, which is hilarious, and then like the sheer amount of characters you could pick, the realisticness of the martial arts, watching like the hit boxes of that like slow-mo motion when you're both throwing out a hit that can kill each other, and it just like one will kind of swing right above their head and the other one clocks the person upside their jaw, and it's just the hype that I could feel was so amazing. And I remember filling out a like 3 pages of loose leaf with combos of different characters that I wanted to learn, and I would sit there and I'd mess with it. I'd write new things down. I was like, oh, that worked, let me chain that into this one. So it became this grid of like x x x plus triangle square down into the quarter circle over here, and I would have like lines connected to it all. And it was just such a weird time in my life that I got so swept up in it.
Is that what started your fighting game craze that followed you all the way to like the Dragon Ball Z game and even Guilty Gear? Okay, that makes sense.
That's what actually picked it up, because I wasn't really into fighting games besides like, I mean, your Smash Bros being a fighting game more or less,
which is debatable.
Yeah, a lot of people debate that, but
you punch and you punch other characters. I can see right. You can. It's a fighting game. It's not traditional.
So yeah, so it was Tekken 7 that actually got me into the concept of fighting games as like really trying it, and then Dragon Ball FighterZ, I really was working on that, but the style was so different that I struggled, because you can't just learn one character, you have to learn 3. Plus their combinations with each other, and then I was like, this is too much for me. So when Guilty Gear Strive came out, it was like it had all that dialed back, one character you can get good at, and it just looks so pretty that I actually still need to go back and play that a little bit.
That's my thing with fighting games. Like I don't think I can ever play a fighting game at such a technical level. I don't have that kind of patience, especially knowing that there was other people that just
usually I don't either. That's the thing.
Learn the minutia of the different combos and all of that. And but like, for example, a fighting game that what would get me into a fighting game is a story mode. That's what the Mortal Kombat 9 did for me. And then Injustice, and then Mortal Kombat 10, and then Injustice 2, and MK11.
NetherRealm is unmatched
in the story department.
Storyline.
Yeah. It's like, it's good for me that doesn't want to like really engage with those games on such a technical competitive level. And that's great for me that they were able to give me that, because then other fighting games, I don't think they have that kind of story. At least I don't know yet. I saw the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite story, so a little bit of it. Atrocious. So
yeah, a lot of them try to, and they try to like explain how these characters might bump into each other and fight. Guilty Gear did something interesting where it's all cutscenes. Like there's no input by you just watch. You just watch it all play out, and it's immensely long. But in the end, that is my choice, and I'm glad to hear yours as well.
And for different reasons. It's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
And so that's all to say, everybody listening and watching, please, every once in a while, if something piques your interest that's not in what you usually do,
Give it a
try
shot.
it, and you might be surprised what you find interesting.
Be open-minded. Like if there's something that Shadow of the Colossus taught me, is that to be open-minded, not to immediately say that's not for me. Say it after you've tried it. If after you've tried it, it's not for you, at least you've tried it.
Yeah. And with that, that is everything that we have to say, everybody. Alejandro, this has been a really fun episode. We got to talk about everything. We went very in depth with everything, but I felt a lot less guilty because I knew that we didn't have to jump into news afterwards.
I told you it was gonna be better for us that way because we didn't hold back.
We didn't, and
I'm excited for the future. Yeah,
eventually, we'll have to learn to hold back.
Oh yes, absolutely for time, but at the same time, if you have to say something, then we don't feel the need to cut it this time.
And we played a lot more in this 1 week than we usually do. Which
other times I bet it's gonna be way less. Right. This just happened to be everything just stacking up.
So. Right. And then in the end, everyone, I also want to tell y'all, social media wise, you can find me at Dork of Art on YouTube and Twitter, and at AngelSword21 on Twitch. Alejandro, where can everyone find you?
They can find me at the Slayer Giant in twitch.tv / the Slayer Giant. They can find me on YouTube at. Also, I have the Slayer Giant in YouTube, but I put most of our stuff here in the Escape Media YouTube. You can find me at Twitter at @A_Dorsegovia, and Instagram at AlejandroSegovia93, and some of my written content at thecriticalcorner.com.
Awesome to hear. Well, everybody, that's been us, and I hope that you can actually let us know how this works out for you. Do you like the new method? Do you like the new format? Comment below, check it out, and until then, we'll see y'all next time. To play.
Yes.
See ya, everybody.
Like, share, and subscribe.